the Hollywood Unapologetic Podcast with Orlando Delbert, Filmmaking Essentials. You know that iconic final scene in Casablanca? The foggy airport, Rick and Ilsa's heartbreaking goodbye.
Oh, yeah, absolutely classic.
Well, get ready for this.
Yeah.
Turns out that whole scene, not quite what it seems. That wasn't a real airport.
That's fascinating because, that little detail, it says so much about how this film got made. Yeah. Resourcefulness, right?
Exactly.
So today, we're not just like rewatching a classic. We're digging into the history, the tricks, the stories behind it. We've looked at behind the scenes stuff, critical analyses, even fan discussions online.
All to figure out why it still hits home for people, especially folks like our listeners who want the real story.
Precisely. And it's wild to think when it came out in 1942, World War II raging.
Yeah.
They probably had no idea, the filmmakers, the actors, no clue it would become this legend. It's always on those greatest films lists.
Absolutely. So, okay, let's unpack that final scene secret a bit more. The airport thing.
Right. So sources confirm wartime rules meant no filming at a real airport at night. Just couldn't do it.
Okay. Restriction.
Exactly. So what do? They build the whole thing on a Warner Bros. Soundstage.
The whole airport?
Well, enough of it.
Yeah.
And that fog, not just for mood, it was crucial for hiding the fact that the plane was basically a cardboard cutout scaled down.
You're kidding. Cardboard.
Cardboard. It's amazing, right? Creative problem solving born out of necessity really shows how they had to think on their feet back then.
Totally. But how did they make a cardboard cutout look big? Convincing.
Well, this is the really clever part. Forced perspective.
Okay.
They hired little people to play the mechanics working on the plane.
No.
Yes. By placing them near the camera relative to this smaller model, it made the prop plane look enormous. It's brilliant, low-budget ingenuity.
Wow. That's incredible.
It really is. And it wasn't like a one-off trick in movie history. Think about Alien.
Ridley Scott.
Yeah. He used his own kids in smaller spacesuits to make that giant space jockey creature look massive. Same principle.
Okay. I see the connection.
Or, Darby O'Gill and the little people, obviously, with the leprechauns. And then, much later, Lord of the Rings used it all the time for the hobbits.
Right, to show the size differences.
Exactly. So Casablanca was really innovating using these practical tricks that filmmakers kept using for decades, all because they couldn't film at a real airport.
Amazing. Cardboard planes influencing space jockeys.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit.
The look of the film. The cinematography, it's so distinctive, even in black and white.
Oh, absolutely. It's dripping with style. You've got that film noir influence, definitely.
Explain that a bit more, the noir thing.
Well, cynical heroes, lots of shadows, stark lighting, gives it that morally gray, uneasy feeling.
Okay.
And you also see hints of German expressionism, that earlier style with distorted angles, really dramatic shadows, trying to show what's going on inside the characters' heads visually.
So the way it looks tells the story too.
Totally. The cinematographer, Arthur Edison, was a master at this. He used a lot of high contrast lighting, big difference between the bright spots and the dark spots, very dramatic.
Creates mood.
Exactly. And low-key lighting, too, which is mostly shadows, builds suspense. Think about Rick's face, often half in shadow, right?
Yeah, I can picture that.
That's intentional. It's showing his internal conflict, his two sides.
But it wasn't all shadows and darkness, was it? I seem to remember some softer moments.
You're right. Good point. And the scenes just between Rick and Elsa, especially the flashbacks, Edison switched it up.
How so?
Used softer, more natural-looking light. It creates this intimacy, makes their connection feel more real, more emotional. It's a really smart contrast to the harshness elsewhere.
So the lighting changed depending on the scene's feeling.
Precisely. Adapting the style to serve the emotion, very sophisticated for the time.
And the camera itself?
No.
Did it move much?
Yeah. Surprisingly, yes. For a 1942 film, it's quite dynamic. They used handheld shots, especially in Rick's Cafe, which makes it feel more immediate, like you're right there in the crowd.
Gets you into the scene.
Yeah. And tracking shots that follow characters around, showing off that bustling environment. But then they'd also use static shots for the really big emotional moments. Hold on the actor's face.
Let the weight sink in.
Right. And subtle dolly moves, pushing in slowly, close-ups, all to pull you into what the characters are feeling.
It sounds like every shot was really thought through.
Oh, definitely. The composition, too. Wide shots to show the setting, the scale, close-ups for raw emotion. And they use things like doorways, shadows, even furniture sometimes as visual barriers to show the obstacles between characters or their sort of emotional distance.
Like framing them separately?
Exactly. And sometimes the shadows even look like prison bars. It's not subtle, but it works. Shows how trapped everyone feels. It all adds up.
Remarkable. So much packed into the visuals. Okay, let's talk about the script itself. I heard the writing process was, well, complicated.
That's putting it mildly.
Yeah.
Yeah, the script was constantly evolving. It wasn't just one writer. You had the Epstein twins, Julius and Philip.
Okay.
Howard Koch came in. Casey Robinson apparently did some work uncredited. And even the producer, Hal Wallace, was throwing in lines.
Wow, a team effort.
A very fluid team effort. And the craziest part, they didn't know how it was going to end until almost the very last minute.
Seriously, while they were filming.
Yep. Imagine being Ingrid Bergman playing Ilsa. She apparently kept asking, who do I love more? Who am I supposed to play this scene for? Because nobody could tell her definitively if she ended up with Rick or Laszlo.
That must have been incredibly difficult as an actor.
Absolutely. But, maybe that uncertainty actually added something, that tension, that ambiguity we feel. Maybe it comes partly from the fact that even the actors didn't have all the answers.
Interesting point. Where did the story even come from originally?
It started as an unproduced play called Everybody Comes to Rick's.
Ah, okay.
Hal Wallace bought the rights. The Epstein started adapting it. Then they actually left for a bit to work on Frank Capra's war documentaries, the Why We Fight series.
No.
So Howard Koch took over, wrote a draft, then the Epsteins came back and reworked it again. It was layers upon layers.
And that famous final line. Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Was that always there?
Nope. That was apparently Wallace's idea, added very late. Bogart had to come back after filming wrapped just to dub that one line.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
A post-filming edition.
That's the story. Shows how much tinkering was going on right up to the end.
So it really was a group project constantly being shaped. And did they also change the release date?
They did. Smart move by the studio, Warner Bros. It was originally slated for spring 1943.
Okay.
But they rushed it out for November 1942. Why? Because the Allies had just invaded North Africa Operation Torch, landed in Casablanca, among other places.
Timing.
Perfect timing. And then the Casablanca conference with Roosevelt and Churchill happened there in January 43. The studio saw the headlines and capitalized on that real-world relevance, made the film feel incredibly timely.
Clever. Both creatively messy and strategically smart. Okay, let's take a little detour. Our research mentioned the double feature. What was that all about, historically?
Ah, yeah, the double feature. That takes us back to the Depression era, mostly. Movie theaters were looking for ways to give people more bang for their buck.
Get them in the door when money was tight.
Exactly. So they started showing 2 movies for the price of 1 ticket.
Right.
And this led to the whole A-movie, B-movie system. The A-movie was the main event, the big budget picture with the stars.
The one people came to see.
Right. And the B-movie was the supporting act. Lower budget, often shorter, maybe less well-known actors, just filled out the program.
So you'd get a big film and then something else.
Pretty much. By the mid-30s, it was standard practice almost everywhere. But not everyone loved it.
Why not?
Well, producers sometimes felt it devalued their big movies. Theater staff had longer hours. Some folks didn't want to sit through a B movie they didn't care about. Kids apparently missed the cartoons and short films that got squeezed out.
I can see that. Mixed bag.
Yeah. And it was tied up with this practice called block booking.
Block booking.
The big studios, which back then often owned the theaters too.
Right, vertical integration.
Exactly. They'd force theaters to rent movies in blocks or bundles. If you wanted the big popular A movie, you had to take a package deal that included a bunch of their B movies too.
Ah, so you couldn't just pick and choose the hit.
Nope. It guaranteed an outlet for all the studio's products, even the cheaper ones. And it fueled these smaller studios called Poverty Row Studios that just churned out B movies really fast and cheap.
So this whole system really shaped what got made and how people watched movies for a long time. What ended it?
Basically, the law stepped in, antitrust cases. The big one was the Paramount case. It challenged that vertical integration, the studios owning everything. Eventually, the courts forced the studios to sell off their movie theaters.
Or broke up the monopoly.
Pretty much. And that made block booking illegal, or at least much harder to enforce. Without that guaranteed distribution, the B-movie units became less profitable for the big studios, and they gradually faded away through the 50s.
Fascinating how those big industry shifts change everything.
Okay,
let's bring it back to Casablanca itself. Its impact. Obviously, releasing it during World War II was huge, But why does it still resonate?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, yes, the romance is key. Bogart and Bergman, that chemistry.
Undeniable.
But it was so much more than just a love story. Coming out when it did, it was really a film about, well, duty, about resisting fascism, about America needing to ditch isolationism.
Rick's line, "I stick my neck out for nobody."
Exactly. That was the attitude of a lot of Americans before Pearl Harbor. Rick starts out completely cynical, neutral, just looking out for himself. And his whole arc is about realizing he has to take a side. That some things are more important than his own problems, even his own heartbreak. That mirrored the shift the whole country was going through.
So Rick's journey is kind of an allegory for America's journey into the war.
That's a very common reading, yeah. Rick is America, initially reluctant, ultimately choosing to fight for the greater good.
And does that idea still connect today?
I think some analyses suggest it does, looking at things like the pandemic or calls for social justice, this idea of needing to move beyond purely individual concerns for the sake of the collective good. Rick's journey can feel like a template for that.
That's a powerful thought. And the film's stance against authoritarianism, that feels pretty relevant too.
Absolutely. You've got the Nazis right there, menacing and oppressive. You see the desperation of the refugees trying to escape. It's a stark portrayal of what happens under tyranny. And those themes, sadly, still echo today with conflicts and refugee crises around the world. Plus, remember, a lot of the actors and crew on Casablanca were immigrants or refugees themselves, people who had fled Europe.
Wow, I didn't realize that. Adds another layer.
It really does. It makes the film's empathy for the displaced, its stand against that kind of dehumanization feel even more authentic. And think about that La Marseillaise scene.
Oh, chills. Just thinking about it.
Right. When everyone in Rick starts singing the French anthem to drown out the Germans, it's such a powerful moment of collective defiance. You still see echoes of that spirit today, people standing up together against oppression.
It really transcends its time. So beyond the politics and the history, just purely as a film, why does it hold up so well?
Well, it's just firing on all cylinders, isn't it? You've got that compelling story, love, sacrifice, doing the right thing even when it hurts.
Timeless stuff.
Totally. The characters are complex, memorable, you root for them, you feel their dilemmas. Themes of honor, loyalty, duty, they still resonate.
And the dialogue. So many quotable lines.
Oh, the screenplay is legendary. Sharp, witty, emotional. Here's looking at you, kid. We'll always have Paris. Round up the usual suspects. It's incredible.
True classics.
And then the performances, Bogart's cool vulnerability, Bergman's radiance and conflict, Claude Rains stealing every scene as Renault.
He's fantastic.
Just perfect casting. Add Max Steiner's score, especially the whole story around using As Time Goes By because it was in the original play.
Right, the song connects them.
And Edison's cinematography that we talked about, it all just comes together. It's a perfect storm of talent and maybe a bit of luck.
I saw some online chats, like on Reddit, where people were saying it's almost an anti-romantic war film.
Yeah.
That the sacrifice is the real point, more than the love story.
That's a really interesting take, and I think it speaks to why it lasts. Yes, the romance is powerful. Bogart and Bergman's chemistry is off the charts. But the core message about choosing the bigger cause over personal happiness, that gives it a depth that maybe a simple romance wouldn't have. Of course, not everyone loves it. Some people find it slow compared to modern movies, maybe a bit talky.
Sure. Tastes change.
But for most people, its power is undeniable. It influenced so many films that came after it. It really set a standard.
Which brings us back to where we started, that final scene. The fog, the fake plane, the little people. Knowing how it was made, this kind of low-budget, high-ingenuity trick. Does that change how we see its legacy?
I think it enhances it, honestly. It doesn't diminish the scene's power at all. If anything, it makes you appreciate the artistry even more.
How so?
Because it shows that great filmmaking isn't just about big budgets or fancy effects. It's about creativity, problem solving, using whatever you have to tell the story effectively. They were under pressure, wartime constraints, and they still created one of the most iconic moments in cinema history. That's testament to their skill.
So, Casablanca. It's full of surprises, isn't it? From the secrets behind the scenes, that constantly changing script, to these really deep themes about duty and resistance that somehow still feel relevant.
Absolutely. It's that blend, I think. Great story, unforgettable characters and performances, and this really innovative, resourceful filmmaking. It just created something timeless.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other classic movie moments have these kinds of ingenious, maybe even slightly bonkers stories behind them?
That's a great question. What does that resourcefulness, that creativity under pressure tell us? Maybe something about how we can tackle our own challenges. And are filmmakers today pulling off similar clever tricks that we won't find out about for another 50 years?
Definitely something to think about. You can find more insights on navigating the entertainment industry and achieving success in Orlando Delbert's work, including his book, Pollyanna's Tear-Soaked Battlefields of Hollywood, a survival guide against the cynicism and the hypocritical, and of course, the Hollywood Unapologetic platform. And always remember, you are the key to your own success. You are the new Hollywood generation.
Be informed, be prepared, and most importantly, be great.
That's it. Be great. Good luck out there.
See you next time.